If there's an award for the most improved brand new car here in the market, this would be the clear winner, the new Nissan Almera Turbo. It went from the ugliest to the best looking sedan in its class, and it now has a turbo engine to boot. The question is, does it have the substance to match its new style? And is it a better buy than the Toyota Vios and the Honda City? It's time to find out. Now let's be honest, the old Nissan Almera was not a very good looking car. It was the ugly duckling of the class, as a lot of people called it. It's very tall, it's very narrow, it was all the wrong shapes. Even in styling wise, yeah, let's just say it's not a good looking car at all. So when it comes to making a brand new version of the car, Nissan completely threw the old car into the bin and came up with a fresh new design. Here you've got a whole new platform, new body, new dashboard, new engine, new transmission. So this is top to toe a brand new car. The only thing carried over is the name and the badge. Nothing else is even remotely connected. And also, the old Almera was really, quite old. It came in 2011, 2012, way before Malaysians or even ASEAN in general were exposed to the importance of electronic stability control. So that car was sold up to this year with no ESP and with just one airbag in its base variant. The top car only had 2 airbags and ABS, and that's where the safety features list end. That is absurd. This new one is a whole different ballgame. Airbag count is now up to 6. It has electronic stability control as standard, and get this, it has AEB, autonomous emergency braking, as a standard fitment across the entire range. Even the cheapest version, where the old car only had 1 airbag and no ESC, the new version now has ESC and AEB fitted as standard. As far as generational leaps go, this is one of the furthest, I think. But it all comes at a price, which is the price. Well, the old car was a budget option in the B segment class, starting from just over 65,000 ringgit, going up to around 80,000 ringgit. This new one is now one of the most expensive cars in the class. The cheapest version, the VL, starts from just under 80,000 ringgit, going up to 86,000 ringgit for the mid-level VLP or premium, while this year the VLT for technology is now 91,000 ringgit. It's a fair bit more than the City and the Vios, and short of the ridiculously priced Mazda 2, this is now the most expensive B-segment sedan here in Malaysia. Between the 3 variants, I would recommend that you avoid the base VL version because it only comes with 2 airbags instead of 6 on the other 2 versions. I do want Malaysians to be a lot more demanding of safety features on brand new cars, and just because it has AEB and ESC does not mean that it's never going to come into a crash. If it does happen, you'll want those extra airbags, trust me. As for the top 2 variants, the VLP and the VLT, the 5K difference gets you LED headlights, the rear bootlit spoiler, cruise control, a full around view monitor, and a blind spot monitor as well. I think that is fair enough. Now let's backtrack a little bit to talk about styling. This here carries the very latest Nissan V-Motion design, and I think it looks fantastic. It's very stylish and very modern, and I think it looks fresher than both the Honda City and Toyota Vios. Don't you agree? Down here, the emblem is fully glassed in because it houses the radar for the AEB system. And the headlamps, I gotta mention, only the top spec VLT gets LED DRLs. The lower versions get halogen lights and DRLs, which look really ugly. It just screams that we've bought the cheaper versions. Around the side, this car gets these really sharp 16-inch dual-tone alloys, and it's wrapped with Continental UC6 tires. Now, the tires are abnormally large for this class at 205/55. For a comparison, the Honda City only uses 185 tires all around. Back here, as many will agree, is the best looking angle for the Nissan Almera. Finally, we have a properly good looking B-segment sedan that we can all buy at a decent price. It's nice and long with a rather traditional 3-box sedan look that avoids the rather awkward, tall and narrow body look that's usually associated with the likes of the Proton Saga and Proto Abeza. Now, the Honda City can't quite avoid that look. There's actually a lot going on back here. The slight upward kink on the C-pillar is quite unique, although I don't really like that semi-floating roof look on this car. Perhaps if Nissan had used nicer looking gloss black trim instead of this cheap looking black plastic, it would have looked slightly better. But moving further back, this car has this gorgeous smoke LED taillights together with this gloss black big and chunky bootlit trim. It looks properly sporty, this. Down at the bottom, this big carbon fiber print fits the theme as well, although this body colored trim over there looks a little bit garish, especially when paired with a brighter finish like this orange car. But otherwise, I really love this orange paint on this car. It looks very flashy, which is something unique for the class. Now, despite this car carrying this turbo badge with pride, it does not have any exposed tailpipes, which is a bit of a shame. The pipe, a very small one, is neatly tucked behind the bumper here. Inside, there is a transformational change for the Almera, just like the exterior. Compared to the old car, it's a night and day difference. It's a good thing, obviously. Design-wise, this car has a mature feel. It's very classy, and for the most part, it's all nicely symmetrical, which I do really appreciate. Now, this is a much nicer dashboard design, I think, than the latest Honda City that just looks a little bit offset and very awkward. The basic elements are all very nicely designed. The aircon vents are right at the top, so it doesn't blow your hands when you drive along, and the big center screen has nice buttons on the side, very good knobs on each corner, while the aircon controls are also very symmetrical. Everything is placed where they should be with a good logic behind it. As for quality, it's generally very good as well. The top half is fully covered in hard plastics, but that is to be expected in a B segment class like this. But in terms of the surface finishing, I think this is miles better than what we've seen in the Honda City. That looks a little bit cheap. This is very nice and classy. If anything, it looks even better than what we've seen in the Toyota Vios. As you move down, there's this big white leather padding over here, which I do love, but a lot of people might not like it because it's going to be a little bit too hard to maintain in the long run. But for a start, I think it looks fantastic. Unfortunately, Nissan has also extended the use of this white leather across the sides of the seats as well. Now, that's not a very good decision, I think. This car is only about a month old. It's only done about 2,000 kilometers, but already the sides of the seats look worse for wear. Over a couple of years, it's going to look nasty. But back to quality, there's a nice tightness to everything, from all the knobs and the way they turn and feel to all the buttons. Everything look and feel very well engineered. So fit and finish for this car is top notch, although this particular car has the glove box a little bit misaligned. So if you buy this car, do check for that. The glove box itself, by the way, is absolutely massive. It's one of the biggest I've seen in the class. Moving down here, you have a very narrow center console, which is good for bigger legroom, and there is a unique placement for the push start button, which is down here instead of the regular place back behind the steering wheel. I guess this is much easier to find. Sometimes I do find myself just touching that whole area over there looking for the button. This is just in plain sight. The gear knob itself is very simple with a hidden spot button down there, although I do wish that the knob itself feels a little bit better in terms of quality. Right now, the plastic is a bit shiny and I can feel a bit of play at the top of the knob. A slightly better feeling knob would be greatly appreciated. Back here, there's a traditional handbrake, par for the course for the class, of course. And in the Honda City even, the electronic parking brake is only fitted on the top spec RS version. The rest of the range gets a regular handbrake just like this. Although I do wish they would have added a leather cover for this grab handle. Now it's a bit cheap. Now lastly, there is a center armrest in the back here, although weirdly enough, the leather used over here looks a little bit nicer than what they've used on the seats themselves. It's quite nice and softly padded, although the build quality is a bit suspect. As you can see, it looks a bit, it can be better, I think. But what I do really like is the center screen over here is very nice and sharp, and it has Apple CarPlay as standard. Now this is an official Nissan screen, so it's not an aftermarket screen, and really feels properly engineered. It does not have Android Auto, unfortunately, but that is because this is a system designed specifically for the ASEAN market, where Android Auto is not officially introduced yet. But compared to the older Almeras or even the rest of the B segment class, this head unit is one of the best in the field. At the front here is a semi-digital instrument cluster. On the right is a fully analog speedometer, while on the left the ref counter is actually part of a digital screen. Now this here may look very good in theory, but the execution isn't quite very good. With the left screen over here, it can only show one thing at a time, so you have to choose between showing the ref counter or any other information available in there. Usually the best part of having digital dials is the customizability of it. With this one, you can't customize anything. And overall, I think it just looks a bit too simple. It doesn't quite match the rest of the car. It would have looked a lot nicer if the graphics, the numbers, the fonts look a little bit more exciting. It's very clear right now, but it's also extremely boring. The steering wheel, meanwhile, is shared together with the Nissan Serena and a few other models, and it has a very thin rim. It feels quite nice in your hands, although the leather covers feel a little bit too much like a polyurethane grip. It feels too much like regular plastic. But moving on to the seats, they are absolutely fantastic. Definitely the best in the class by far. These use what Nissan calls zero gravity technology. Whatever that means, it feels absolutely fantastic. It's very comfortable, it's very supportive. Yeah, nothing else in this class comes even close to this. Nissan is now the Japanese Volvo of making front seats. One more thing before we move to the back is the key fob over here. Now, you may be familiar with this. It's the exact same key they've used for the past, I don't know, 15-20 years now. It's also the same key as used in the Nissan GTR, but that's also the problem. The GTR is already 15 years old, and so is this key design. I think it's about time you've changed this, Nissan. As for rear seats, space is absolutely fantastic for the B segment class. There's loads of legroom left, and because you do sit a bit higher in the back here compared to the front, the visibility looking out is excellent as well. Now this is going to be greatly appreciated by your kids sitting in the back here, but for adults this is going to be a little bit of a problem. Now I'm only 167 centimeters tall, but if I sit upright, my hair is already somewhat touching the ceiling of this car. So if you're a little bit taller than me, you do have to slouch down a little bit, so it's less comfortable in the long run. But other than that, the seat comfort here is generally very good. The seat base is very long, it's quite supportive, and the back is very comfortable with a nice angle too. One thing though, the rear headrests are not adjustable, they're just fixed there. Another big drawback of the Almera is the lack of rear aircon vents in the back here, like what you get in the Honda City. I just don't understand it though. Nissan had a full generation to catch up with the Honda City, but they just couldn't be bothered. And yeah, there's just a small little USB port over there instead of aircon vents that you really want. That is a big of a shame. There is also this exposed bolt down there. Yeah, that just looks a little bit cheap, man. Come on. One last thing that looks cheap are all these yellow bulb lights in the cabin. Now Nissan sells an LED upgrade for this for 150 bucks, but come on, that should not have been set as an option at all. That should be standard, especially on the top range car like this. As for the boot, the Nissan Almera is actually very good. In terms of absolute volume, it's actually smaller than before at 482 litres versus 490, but that is the same trend that we've seen in the latest Honda City as well. I think car designers are finally prioritizing the usable space and shape of the boots instead of absolute volume, and I think that is a good direction to go to. It is slightly smaller compared to the City, but the difference is less than 10%, so it's not that big of a difference. In terms of usable space, this is absolutely cavernous back here. I think it can be more practical than some smaller size SUVs as well. And you can fold the rear seats down, although it doesn't really fold flat. But then again, that is pretty much the standard for cars in this class. What I don't like is this big metal beam at the back of the boot, which, you know, if I've got something precious in the back, like a laptop bag or something, I don't want it to hit that metal beam when I drive. Underneath the boot floor is a space saver spare tire, so it's not quite as practical as the full-size spare tire in the Toyota Vios. One more thing, the boot is actually very easy to close. All you have to do is tilt it back a little bit, and it will close gently. That is a really nice touch. Now, let's go drive this thing. A big change that you can't really see in the new Almera is what's under the hood. The old car had a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine, but here comes a brand new downsized 1 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged motor up front. This HR10 DET engine still uses multi-point injection, so it's not quite the state-of-the-art engines like what we've seen in the Proton X50. But Nissan has added quite a few cool features to give it a slight advantage. This has an electronic wastegate to minimize turbo lag, and also what Nissan calls a mirror bore coating, apparently something taken from the Nissan GT-R. Now this is a technology that lines the insides of the engine to minimize friction, and it gives you more power while giving you extra efficiency as well. But all that doesn't really translate well into numbers, because this car only has about 100 PS. If we convert that to HP, that's about 98, 99. So yeah, less than 100 horses. But what's more significant is the torque, which is 152 Newton meters of torque. Now the old 1.5 litre engine had 102 PS, so there's actually a slight drop in terms of power, while torque has gone up from 142 to 152. But then again, if you compare it against the most powerful car in the class, which is the Honda City, that makes 121 PS and 145 Newton meters of torque. So the power there, that car has over 20% more compared to this. That is a massive margin. In torque, this car only has a 7 Newton meter advantage compared to the City, despite this being a turbocharged engine and all that. So that's a bit underwhelming. But you know what, as a lot of people say, the numbers don't tell the full story, because the way this car performs, it's a huge upgrade compared to the City. In terms of overall performance, this car just feels a lot smoother, a lot more effortless compared to the City, despite the lack of power. This car has its peak torque delivered from about 2000 RPM going all the way up to 4000 RPM, whereas in the City you need to rev the car up to about 4000 RPM to get even close to the peak torque. There is a night and day difference in terms of power delivery. I'm not saying that this car is sports car fast, because it's so far from it. It doesn't feel quick at all, to be honest. It just feels more effortless in terms of accelerating from 0 to 60 or from 60 to 100. It feels a lot more effortless compared to the City, where you need to rev the car up much higher compared to this. This also has a much more refined, much quieter engine compared to the City. So it just feels like this car is working a lot less to give you that amount of performance, whereas the City just sounds like it's working that much harder to give you the performance that you're asking for. Like I said, this car is not fast at all. I timed this car from 0 to 100. Takes about 11.5 seconds. So yeah, it's not a quick car at all. It just feels effortless. For a city car though, that's not bad at all. Effortless is far better than being lethargic, and it's nowhere close to being underpowered. Part of that comes from the excellent CVT transmission over here, which is also a big change for the Almera. The old car had a 4-speed automatic, while this new one has a latest Nissan Xtronic CVT with a D-step logic. The D-step logic is something that's quite interesting. It makes this car feel like it doesn't have a CVT at all. It feels like a regular automatic transmission. As you accelerate out, this car's revs will actually climb and drop like in a regular automatic transmission, like as you change gears through the speed. It gives off a much more natural feeling for this car as you accelerate along, much like an 80 instead of a rubber band effect that you get in normal CVTs. I really like that. It's completely artificial, of course, but it is a much better application of this system compared to you may have seen before in Proton's SATs. There's also a sport mode for the CVT via a hidden button on the gear knob over here. Now this makes the car feel a lot more responsive. As soon as you press your foot down, the revs jump up a couple of thousand revs higher and the car just goes forward. It's not going to shoot forward because it's not that fast, not that powerful, but it does give you that responsive, natural feel. One big benefit of using a downsized 3-cylinder engine is fuel consumption, because this car, no matter how you drive it, it is extremely efficient. Through regular normal driving with a bit of performance testing, I've averaged about 15 kilometers per liter, around 15 to 16 kilometers per liter, or 6.5 liters per 100 kilometers. That is a lot better than what we usually get with a lot of our test cars. It's definitely better than the previous Honda City and Toyota Vios that we've tested as well. So yeah, with this car you do get somewhat the best of both worlds: extra performance because of the turbo and extra efficiency because of the 3-cylinder layout. So yeah, in terms of fuel economy, this is excellent. Now Nissan is so confident of its extra efficiency that it has even downsized this car's fuel tank down from 41 liters from the old Almera to just 35 liters here. That is again abnormally small for a car of this size. The City, for instance, has 40 liters, but even then you will easily get over 500 kilometers over the small fuel tank. That's how efficient this car really is. If you drive it very slowly, very carefully, you can even get close to the claimed 18.4 kilometers per liter. I wouldn't be surprised if you can even reach 20 if you drive it slow enough. So overall, I think the engine and transmission combo is a really good one. What's not so great is the slight lack of refinement for this 3-cylinder engine. Now there's a lot of talk of 3-cylinder engines making a comeback in the market. That is not just a cheap way of making an engine, it's also the future of small car engines. And that's mostly true, but with this one it still feels a little bit too much like a cheap engine. When you just start the car up in the morning and just wait in the car, there's a little bit of that vibration coming through to the car. And even when you are just stopped in traffic, idling, you still feel that slight annoying vibration going through the pedals, going through the seats. So you are almost always aware that this is a 3-cylinder engine, not a more refined 4-cylinder engine. To its credit, the moment you move off, the moment you accelerate, you don't really feel much of the vibration. It's not like a properly old school 3-cylinder engines like in the Pro Duo Asias and whatnot. It's a lot more refined than that. But to say that this is as good as a 4-cylinder engine, no, it's not quite there. This is perhaps what Honda was afraid of when it decided to come with a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder for the City instead of its 1 litre 3-cylinder turbo available in other markets like in Thailand. Overall, I think the vibrations is something that you will get used to, but it is something that will follow you across the whole ownership experience of this car. What's also going to follow you is the shorter service intervals of this car. This car, because it's turbocharged, it has a shorter service interval of 7,000 kilometers instead of 10,000 in the City and in the Vios. If you do a lot of mileage, that will mean that you are going to service this car a lot more often compared to the other cars. But having said that, we've gone through the service and maintenance list for this car, and if you follow the exact proper maintenance schedule, it is actually cheaper to maintain this over the City and the Vios. It's just that if you do a lot of mileage, you will be seeing a lot more of the service center than you will in the City and the Vios. Now let's talk about the ride and handling of the new Almera. Overall, it is a really good car, a massive improvement over the previous generation Almera. The first thing you'll definitely notice is the slightly firm feeling from the suspension and dampers. That's something that you will not really forget as you drive the car. At low speeds, whenever you hit a sharp bump, you will feel that the car is very firmly damped. But as the speeds rise, this will smoothen it out, and you will feel that this overall is still a very comfortable, very sophisticated riding car. Especially on the highways, this is supremely comfortable, it's supremely stable, and overall I would rate this suspension system a level above the Vios and the City. It has that coveted big car ride comfort that is something missing usually in B segment cars. Normally, especially the old Almera felt a little bit bouncy on the highways, and that's the same with the City and the Vios as well. This, however, feels like you can eat up miles at 120, 130 kilometers per hour constantly for a couple of hours without feeling like it's doing anything more than it should be. Now, as for handling, this has an almost unnaturally light steering wheel. At lower speeds, it almost feels like you're playing PlayStation. That's how light the steering is. But as speeds rise, as you take corners, it actually loads up quite well. So in terms of EPSs go, electronic power steering, this is one of the better ones. There's not so much in terms of feel, of course. I think no EPS around has actual feel anymore, but this is not as dead as quite a few steerings out there. It's not too bad. The way it loads up through the corners to make you feel like you are in control it's actually quite enjoyable to experience. And it's the same way with cornering agility as well. It's not quite a performance hero, it's not quite a hot hatch, but that inherent firmness from the suspension can really be felt through the corners. This car has excellent body control, even when you take corners slightly faster than you really should. So yeah, this is now a Nissan Almera that you can enjoy driving even through corners. So yeah, that's quite a big change for this car. Now in terms of refinement, again, it's actually quite good. The engine, despite being a 3-cylinder engine, is very, very quiet. Nissan has put a lot of attention in terms of reducing the noises that's coming into the cabin. There's a whole lot of extra insulation, a lot of extra padding, so what comes into the cabin is a lot less than what we had before. So in terms of engine noise, you actually feel very minimal of it. This is me doing full throttle, and yeah, this is far quieter than the Toyota Vios and the Honda City. It's not a nice sounding engine note, but yeah, at least you don't hear too much of it. In terms of road noise, in terms of wind noise, it's also very, very good. Wind noise, it does pick up at around 110 kilometers per hour, and as you go higher, it does gradually build up. But it's not too bad. I think it's slightly better than the rest of the class as well. Tire roll is slightly more than usual, I would say, partly because this car has such thick tires, 205 versus 185s. So there is a much bigger contact patch on this car compared to its rivals. So that will of course give you a little bit extra tire roll compared to smaller tires. But I don't think it's that annoying to the point of being a deal breaker. This in fact already has a decent set of tires under the car. It has Continental UC6, which is one of the better ones out there, definitely better than the CC5s fitted to the old Almera. So you do have to be careful when it comes to replacing the tires on this one. You do want quality rubber. If you put on cheap tires on it, the tire roll is going to get much, much worse than this. Now in terms of safety, this car has, like I said, AEB-S standard. That is absolutely fantastic. It also has electronic stability control. It has 6 airbags across the 2 top models. And what's more important, I think, is something that's a lot simpler, but a lot of cars don't have: a seatbelt reminder for the rear passengers. Now, listen to what happens when a rear passenger, my videographer, takes off his seatbelt. Yeah. There's a proper buzzer to tell you that one of your kids are not putting on their seatbelts. That is fantastic. At the very least, this can convince your rear passengers, whether they are your kids, your friends, or your stubborn parents, to put on their rear seatbelts, because that, after all, is more important than anything else. The car can be as safe as you want it to be, but if you're not wearing seatbelts inside, nothing's going to help you. This top spec VLT version also adds on a blind spot monitor, which is quite good, and as well as a 360-degree around view monitor. Now the camera feed is actually quite blurry, it's not very sharp, but then again, it's miles better than what's available on the Toyota Vios. The City doesn't even have this feature, so yeah, there's that. But what the City has over this car, however, is the Honda sensing system. This car may have AEB, but there's not much beyond that. The Honda City in its top spec RS trim has adaptive cruise control, active lane keep assist, and all that. So yeah, the City is slightly more advanced than this. However, that is only on the top spec RS hybrid. So if you're looking at the 1.5V, this is definitely a lot better because the V doesn't have AEB on the City. So overall, the new Nissan Almera Turbo is an extremely strong showing for the B segment class. It's no longer the budget option. It has propelled itself right to the very top of the class. But in terms of looks, quality, performance and comfort, I think it has more than enough to justify its higher prices. As far as brand revivals go, this is a strong showing from Nissan, and I think both Toyota and Honda are right to worry about this new Almera. For us consumers, that's just great news. More competition means better cars in the future. But for the current market right now, today, between the Almera, Vios and the City, I think this is the one I would spend my own money on. So over to you, which one would be the choice for you and why? Let me know in the comments section below. And what do you think about the Almera as a whole? Do you think this is a good showing for Nissan, or is it a little bit too late? All that in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, everyone.